Mr. President.
I recognize the senator from Maryland.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to start by thanking our colleagues from Virginia, starting with Senator Kaine, who brought us to this debate here on the Senate floor today on a very important question. And to my other colleague from across the Potomac River from Maryland, Senator Warner. And we sometimes disagree on various issues. On this, we have solidarity across the Potomac River. And that unity comes from a very simple result, which is we are here to sound the alarm about the trade war that Donald Trump just unleashed today. He calls it Liberation Day. If he had made this announcement yesterday on April Fool's Day, people would have thought it was an April Fool's joke. But this is no joke, and it's not Liberation Day. It is a national sales tax day, because that will be the result of the president's action. A sales tax on the American people, a national sales tax. Because today the president announced he was levying massive across-the-board tariffs on countless goods, making big promises, but at the end of the day betraying the American people, who are going to be hit hard by rising prices. And you know, we've heard the president make a lot of promises about what these tariffs will do. It's like a miracle cure. They're going to revive American manufacturing. They're going to stop fentanyl. They're going to balance our budget. They're going to make all of us rich, and all those other countries are going to pay for it. Problem is, none of that is true. Other countries don't pay these tariffs. We do. It is a sales tax on goods imported from other countries. American importers pay the tax at the border, and they pass the costs on to the consumers. What else are they supposed to do? And American manufacturers that put together products here in the United States but import some of the parts they use in those products will face higher costs, higher prices on the parts that they import. And they're going to have to pass on those costs to American consumers, so they're going to have to jack up their prices. When they jack up their prices, not only do American consumers pay more, but those American manufacturers and American producers, when they're exporting goods overseas, they're having to export at higher prices, and that makes their products less competitive overseas. And on top of that, it's a double whammy, because when you have these big tariff increases on products from other countries aren't just going to sit back and take it. They're going to respond. They're going to retaliate. They're going to put tariffs on American products that we export to their countries. And what will happen then? That means that an American producer exporting products overseas, whether manufactured products or agriculture products, their products are going to face higher prices in those countries. And they will be less competitive, and people in those countries will buy less of those American products. So that means here at home they'll have to lay off workers. It's going to hurt the economy back home in both those ways. You know, we saw a little mini version of this during the first Trump administration. Back then, Donald Trump raised tariffs on Chinese products, and China responded with retaliatory tariffs on many American farm exports like wheat and soybeans and pork. What happened? Well, American farmers sold less of those products overseas. They got more expensive. And you know how we know this was all a big fake out? Was when American farmers were not able to sell their products into China's market because of China's retaliatory tariffs, we bailed them out. We, the American taxpayer, we spent $23 billion in taxpayer money from the American people to pay American farmers not to be more productive. They were productive, but because China raised tariffs on their products in retaliation for Donald Trump raising tariffs on theirs. Now look, we all recognize that tariffs can be an effective tool when they're used in a targeted way with strategic industries. But that's not what Donald Trump is doing. This is not strategic. He is starting an all-out trade war and apparently does not care about the consequences. It is leading already to chaos in the markets. I'm not going to go through all those because Senator Warner and Senator Kaine and others have spoken to that. But at the end of the day, the direction we're heading could well take us into a recession. As Senator Warner mentioned, some of the president's people have said this is going to be $6 trillion worth of tariffs over the next 10 years, by far the largest effective tax hike in American history. Economists estimate that it will cost the typical American household up to $4,200 more per year. That's a whopping sales tax. The National Association of Home Builders says that tariffs will make new homes cost up to $10,000 more at a time when we're already facing an affordable housing crisis. The North America's building trade unions sent a letter opposing these tariffs, saying, and I quote, "We are seeing construction projects slowing down, infrastructure investments being delayed, and economic momentum weakening, resulting in smaller paychecks, fewer jobs, and shrinking opportunities for skilled building trades and workers," unquote. A researcher at Cornell University says a new car could cost up to $20,000 more because of all the back and forth across borders and all the additional tariffs that apply each time a border is crossed. US-made cars are estimated to increase by at least $3,000 or up to $3,000. So buying a house, buying a car, these are all things that families save towards. So what this comes down to is a tax on the American dream. And these increased costs may not mean a lot to the billionaires in the president's cabinet. After all, we had Secretary of Commerce say recently with respect to Social Security benefits that, hey, if Americans didn't get their Social Security benefits 1 week, nobody would notice except the fraudsters. That's the kind of attitude we have from this administration when it comes to increasing prices that we will all experience as a result of these tariffs. They think people won't notice, but they will. Finally, Mr. President, I do want to talk to the other part of this issue. And I'm not going to belabor the point because others have spoken to it eloquently, especially the chief sponsor of this effort, Senator Kaine, which is that President Trump he's abusing the International Economic Emergency Powers Act to apply these tariffs to Canada. That's a law aimed at protecting our national security. It's a law that we have used against adversaries like Iran, Sudan, North Korea, Russia. But here, President Trump is using it to target our longtime friend, our longtime ally, Canada. He's declared a phony emergency on our northern border to target our friends there. Now, he claims that these punitive tariffs will somehow address the fentanyl crisis. And of course, we should be addressing the fentanyl crisis in the United States of America, and this Congress has done a lot and needs to do a lot more. But in the fight against fentanyl, the Canadian people are, number one, they're our allies, and number two, they're not the ones that are causing the problem. 0.2% of fentanyl trafficked in the United States comes across the U.S.-Canadian border, and Canada is right now putting together a $1.3 billion plan to strengthen that border security and stop it altogether. So this is a fake emergency declared by the president, putting on these massive tariffs, and I'll close with why. And we're going to find out more about this in the next couple days. I heard the chairman of the Finance Committee speaking a little bit earlier about how the proceeds from collecting tariffs might be counted and used to offset tax cuts, which are going to be aimed at the very, very wealthy in this country. Tax relief for the wealthy, paid for in part by a national sales tax on all the other Americans in the country. Paid for, as we've heard, by going after Medicaid. So whether it's a national sales tax or other efforts aimed at the American people that will hurt the American people and hit them in the pocketbooks, that's all done in service to pay for tax cuts for the very wealthy, people like Elon Musk. So I want to say thank you to the senator from Virginia, Senator Kaine, for blowing the whistle on this phony action taken at our friend Canada, all as a pretext to increase tariffs, which amount to a huge sales tax on the American people in service of a tax cut for the very wealthy. I thank my colleagues.
Mr. President,
I recognize the senator from Connecticut.
I'm honored to follow my colleague from Maryland who has described so well the reasons that we should oppose